When dramatic or catastrophic problems occur, it's not the experience of the leader that's the problem. No, it's actually the frame of mind that they have in the model that they're using. So what do you do when the model fails? Well, first let's talk about what the tendency is before there's an admission of the model failing. It's the doubling down. It's the pressure that the leader feels because customers have deliveries that are needed. There's resources being spent, time's going by. So there's a lot of pressure to take action, to force to make things happen. And this doubling down is the exact problem that makes things worse. So what do you do? What should the leader do? Well, I'd like to use an example that I think you may be familiar with, and that was Miracle on the Hudson, with Captain Sullenberger as the pilot, who, along with his co-pilot, was able to safely land the plane on the Hudson, and everyone survived. Let's go through what Sullenberger had to do in order for that success to occur. Well, first off, this is a hugely dramatic and traumatic situation because the bird strikes caused both engines to go out. Now, Sullenberger's training was for at least one engine still running, even if the other engine failed. The simulators were set up that way. Again, his training went that way, and there was nothing with regards to a total loss of power occurring. There was no training for that. So he gets hammered right away with that, and I can't imagine how difficult that was. The urge to behave reactively and double down could be intense. Well, all that would do is lead to going through the policies and procedures, the methodologies over and over again that really would just accelerate the situation getting worse. And I believe he and his co-pilot tried that for a little bit, but eventually he just realized, we don't have power, we need to figure out what to do. So the first thing that he did, which is the focus of this video, was he performed what I call a cognitive release. He let go of all the training he had. Now, he didn't let go of his experience, but he let go of the training he had, because all that was going to do is make things worse. Now, that letting go was a real challenge because he was talking to towers at several different airports, and they were insisting, well, you can make it to one of our runways. We think you have enough resources to do it. And Sullenberger's like, no, I don't have any resources. Because he looked at the glide rate, the rate of descent, he looked at airspeed, and he looked at the locations, and like, previous training just wasn't going to work. So he needed to do something, and he needed to do something quick. And here's where he did something that, boy, my hat is off to him. That it's so impressive. He resisted the urge to react. And he stepped back, even if just for milliseconds. He stepped back to just let emerge what could help in the situation. This is hugely powerful. And what occurred was his glider pilot activities, training, came to the surface. And so he did something that was considered a little strange at the time. Was he treated this plane that weighed tens of thousands of pounds as if it was a giant glider. And by the way, he had to account for this in FAA hearings. He was really questioned on the way he made his decisions because there were people that insisted he could make it to an airport. But no, when he dropped the power model and picked up the glider model, all the numbers in terms of altitude, speed, location, etc., they fell into place. And unfortunately, they fell into a really miserable place in that he couldn't make it to any of those airports. So then he had to look for alternative places to land, and that got him into risk management because it was going to be a less than ideal solution. And now he had to find a balance point. So now he's into wicked problems, because wicked problems are characterized by just having a solution, not the solution. And what he did was he decided just to accept that basically I've got the world's largest glider right now, and it's falling precipitously. What do I do? Well, fortunately, the weather was sufficiently reasonable that the Hudson was smooth. And with the size of the airplane and the speed with which it was moving, you could view the Hudson as a runway. I mean, you got to be careful, but essentially it's like hitting a solid surface when you go into it. So having this in mind, he decided a solution, the best one he could think of, was landing on the Hudson. And fortunately, the weather held, because if it would have been choppy, the results would have been a lot different. But he was successful. And where did he start? He started with cognitive release. In other words, he consciously let go of reacting to pay attention with what could or couldn't be done with the current rule book. Now, in Buddhist practice, there's a term for this. It's called active attention, where we key in to the specific reality we were looking at, in this case, landing the plane safely, and all the variables that are present, and not reacting, and seeing what can come to the surface that's the best trade-off. So let's go through, let's review what he did, because this is a methodology that's worth retaining. First, he accepted the situation. He saw it, okay, I don't have power. He let go of reacting to the situation. He let go of like, well, maybe if I pretend there is power and we use our methodologies as if there was power, somehow magically the plane will regain the ability to fly. No, he didn't do that. He stayed away from that. So he accepted what occurred. He let go of reacting. Then he let go of the model, powered flight. And then, even if just for a millisecond, he stepped back to see what would emerge. And in this case, what emerged was his expertise as a glider pilot. By the way, the methods used is, I'm not a glider pilot, but my understanding is when you're flying a glider, you run your calculations as to how you're going to behave a bit differently than how you run calculations when you have powered flight. So the glider model emerged, and he stuck to it, and he was able to land safely on the river. And again, I want to repeat, the level of pressure had to have been astronomical, especially since there was an FAA hearing, and there were people that felt he could have made it to one of the airports where physically it was impossible. And that's a challenge you face as a leader, that being a leader has vulnerability associated with it. I know you don't need me to tell you that, but there's a misconception among people that aren't leaders that somehow, oh, you're the boss, you can just make things happen. Nah, you get exposed. And you've got to be careful about how you decide. And then you still need to do that, though, while servicing your customer, making deadlines, making profit, holding costs down, having good employees, etc. It's very lonely being the leader at times. So in the next video, I want to go through this more in terms of secular Buddhist practice. Okay, why? Well, it's important to develop a kind of like takeoff instructions, if I can stay with the airplane metaphor, or landing instructions. You know, think about how would you feel if you were getting on an airplane and you're going by the cockpit and you hear the pilot tell the co-pilot, let's just skip the takeoff procedures. I've been flying this for a long time. Let's not worry about it. Wow. So you as the pilot of your situation, it's important that even when You can just manage things, and the rules work. Remember that there are times when the rules fall apart, and as a leader, you've got to step in and figure out the best way to move forward with your organization to serve the customer and solve their problem, and to do it profitably. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.